Okay, let's start with Penn State. Losing on the road at UCLA, definitely the worst loss of James Franklin's career. UCLA is just a shell of itself as a program right now, right? They're not good. They're horrible. They've never led in a game. Coming into this game, they have no head coach. They lost their coordinators. They're nothing. And then they put up a 40 bomb on Penn State and on that Jim Knowles' defense. Nico had 5 touchdowns. They couldn't stop him on the ground. I think he had 3 touchdowns on the ground. And for Penn State, this is what we call a spiral. They have no doubt entered a complete downward spiral. Losing last week to Oregon, double overtime, like that loss in itself, it sucks because it's just a pattern of James Franklin losing big games and not being able to win it. But also, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? Like, it sucks and you can't lose those games, but it's not like their season was over. It's not like the playoff hopes were gone. But this is unacceptable. I mean, you cannot lose this game. And if you look at the schedule, you could see this lining up to be a perfect trap game. But trap games happen all the time for teams. And teams can come out in a trap game following an emotional game the week before and just come out flat. And you could argue that's not only what Penn State did here, but then you see teams kind of pull themselves out of it and execute and be better in the second half of this game. And Penn State made it a game, and at points it kind of felt like that they might come back and win it. But this game, I mean, you have the emotional loss to Oregon last week, double overtime, and then going on the road out west, long flight. You could see this lining up as a track game, and the fact that UCLA was actually able to pull it off. The Penn State football program is in a free fall right now. The best they can do is 10-2. They have to go into Columbus and play Ohio State. I don't know if anyone's confident they're going to win that game. Penn State's in a spiral, and it's got to totally suck for that fan base. Let's move on to Texas Tech beating Houston. I still don't know that much about Texas Tech. I know there were people that were high on them in the offseason, and then now, like at this point, week 6 just wrapped up. Like, you can't discount and discredit what teams are doing if they're like a Texas Tech. You're undefeated. They're putting up points. Texas Tech is dangerous. I don't know what to do with them. The Big 12 is not the SEC. They're not the Big 10. I get that. But you can only look at their resume. And again, they haven't played, the toughest schedule in the country. But you can't discredit what they're doing. They haven't given up more than 14 points in a game. They also haven't scored less than 34 points in a game. Their current margin of victory is 40 points a game. So if you are going to play a schedule that's not the strongest, then you should be dominating, and they're dominating. They do have that impressive win over Utah, and then today beating up on Houston. I mean, they are just smashing these teams right now. And if you look at their schedule, I mean, it sets up really nicely. Like, yes, they're going to play Arizona State, they're going to play BYU, and those will certainly be tests, but I can't imagine that they don't end up 10-2 or better unless they have a complete spiral like Penn State, which I don't think there's any reason to believe they're going to do that. But ending up 10-2 or better, I think, is probably more than likely at this point. Let's move into Florida beating Texas. The SEC is a mess. I mean, they're just going to beat the shit out of each other, and that's going to be that for the conference. For Texas, there's glaring issues. 3 for 11 on third down, 10 penalties for 70 yards. And Arch Manning. That's a really big issue right now. He's just not a natural thrower of the football. I just think people talk about the grimace he makes on his face and just he kind of throws his shoulder in a weird way. I'm not saying I'm a quarterback guru, but he's not a natural thrower of the football where some guys like Dante Moore, Julian Sand, the ball is just so effortless coming out, and that does not look the case for Arch Manning. So it just doesn't even look right. He's also barely completing 60% of his passes, or just over 60% of his passes on the season. And if you throw out the 3 cream puff games, throw out San Jose State, throw out UTEP and Sam Houston, just look at the games against Ohio State and Florida, the real competition. He completes 55% of his passes, 3 passing touchdowns and 3 picks, a little over 200 yards per game. That's not special at all, and that's not even close to being good enough for Texas and what they need out of their starting quarterback. And that's why you see them being 3-2 on the year. Let's move on to Alabama beating Vanderbilt. Alabama has certainly figured out some stuff since the Florida State nightmare to start the season. I think you have to really like what Ty Simpson is doing at quarterback. He's doing his job, and just look at his performance against Vanderbilt. 75% completion for 340 yards, 2 touchdowns. On the season, he's completing 70% of his passes, only has the 1 interception on the year. There's a lot to like with what Alabama's doing on offense with Ty Simpson's production. Also, Ryan Williams is clearly being a focus point in the offense to get him the football, as they should. He's a great player. There's a lot to like with Alabama, and they're figuring things out since that loss, but even though you can feel good about Bama right now and still have reserves, because we've seen Kalen DeBoer just go off the rails and have a complete stinker like the game against Oklahoma last year, you can be excited or be reserved, but if you're excited, let's just keep in mind the second half of the schedule. They're going to be tested. Alabama is certainly going to be tested. And it starts with going on the road next week to Missouri, and then October 18th, home versus Tennessee, at South Carolina, home versus LSU, and home versus Oklahoma. And then the following weekend is Cupcake Saturday, November 22nd, as the SEC likes to do it. And then they get into the rivalry game versus Auburn. But this stretch from October 11th to November 15th, Tennessee, Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, those are all more or less quality opponents. This is going to be a tough stretch for Alabama. And even though on paper you would like to say, yeah, we'd like to go 5-0 in that stretch, realistically, I think 4-1. 4-1 is what you want to see Alabama do in this next stretch here from October 11th to November 15th. But there's a lot to like with Alabama right now, and you have to give Kalen DeBoer credit for turning this team around in just a short few weeks. I'm not saying everything is all fixed. I'm not saying Alabama's back, but they're clearly trending upwards, and if they can just kind of quietly ride under the radar and win a lot of these games, they're certainly going to continue making noise. Let's move on to Miami beating Florida State. Is the U back? I think the U is back. And if you only saw the final score of this game and you're like, oh, it's a close, one-score game here, not really. Miami controlled this game. Florida State was down 28-11, and then they scored on what was basically, we'll call it just a garbage time touchdown with 3 minutes left, and then they hit a field goal with 20 seconds left. So this was Miami jumped out on a lead. Miami's offense looks good. There's a lot to like with the Hurricanes right now. Carson Beck is playing well. He's taking care of the football. You're getting everything you wanted, plus I think a little bit more out of Carson Beck. He's playing better than I thought he would, so I'll give him credit there. Miami's also playing well up front, offensive line, defensive line. They're winning at the point of attack, which is important. And then also, going back to the offensive thing, they're getting explosive plays from their skill players. I'm just not used to seeing a Miami team like this. We have good Miami, and I don't know. You can certainly argue that they could be the best team in the country. I probably wouldn't argue that, but certainly in the top tier of college football being Ohio State, Oregon, Miami, however you want to rank those three, I think there's no doubt about it that at this point in time after week 6, those are the 3 best teams in college football. Then there's a gap, and you have other teams as well. But Miami is playing as well as anybody in the country right now.